Right now, one of the most important things happening in the silver market is not happening on a price chart. It is happening inside the vaults. In New Jersey, the amount of registered silver available to satisfy futures delivery is tiny compared with the number of claims circulating through the market. And while most people are watching stocks, currencies, and the next Fed headline, several separate forces are colliding underneath the surface. The Federal Reserve is divided. The Treasury is changing the way it manages long-term debt. China is pulling physical silver into its own market, and global demand is running ahead of mine supply for another consecutive year. Silver is already trading above $68 an ounce and has now put together a third straight weekly advance. But here's the question nobody can answer with certainty. Is this simply another silver rally? Or are we watching the market move into a completely different phase? Because the difference matters. A lot. And by the end of this video, you'll understand what is happening inside the silver market. Why COMEX inventory matters, what China is doing with physical metal, why the Fed and Treasury are creating a strange policy tension, and why some investors believe the next major move could be much larger than the market currently expects. If you're interested in money investing, gold, silver, and protecting your financial future, subscribe to Money Insights and like this video. Every week, we break down the biggest financial stories in simple English. No unnecessary jargon, no empty hype, just the numbers, the forces behind them, and what they could mean for investors. Now let's get into the part of this story that makes the current silver rally different. Here's something most silver videos conveniently leave out. Silver has already had an explosive move this year. Back in January, the metal surged to an all-time intraday high above $121 an ounce. Then it collapsed. The price fell nearly in half within weeks. That means anyone who bought silver near the top learned a very painful lesson. Silver does not move like a calm, predictable asset. It can climb quietly for months, suddenly accelerate, and then reverse violently when positioning becomes crowded. So why should we care that silver is climbing again? Because this time, the behavior looks different. The market is not showing the same kind of frantic euphoria that appeared during the January spike. Instead, silver has been climbing methodically, week after week. That may not sound exciting, but from a market perspective, it could actually be more important. A market that rises without extreme excitement can sometimes be building a much stronger base than a market that explodes overnight, and that brings us to the first major catalyst, the U.S. Treasury. This week, the Treasury Department announced that it would more than double the size of its long-term debt buybacks. In simple terms, the government is buying back some of its older debt in an attempt to improve liquidity and help manage conditions in the bond market. And silver reacted. The metal jumped nearly 6% in a single session around the news. Gold moved as well. But the bigger story is not simply that silver went higher. It is why this happened at this particular moment. Just days earlier, the 30-year Treasury yield had reached its highest level since 2007. Think about what that means. When long-term borrowing costs rise, the consequences spread through the entire economy. It becomes more expensive for the government to finance its debt. It becomes more expensive for companies to borrow money and expand. And for ordinary Americans, higher long-term yields can feed directly into mortgage rates and other borrowing costs. So when the Treasury steps into the bond market and buys back debt, it is effectively trying to influence market conditions and keep borrowing costs from becoming even more restrictive. And that creates an unusual situation. The Treasury is trying to manage long-term borrowing conditions while the Federal Reserve is dealing with a completely different problem: inflation. That tension is one of the reasons precious metals investors are paying attention. Gold and silver do not pay interest. They don't send you a dividend every quarter. They simply sit there. That creates something economists call opportunity cost. When safe bonds are paying attractive yields, owning metal becomes relatively less appealing because an investor is giving up that income. But when policymakers work to suppress long-term yields, that calculation changes. If the return available from bonds becomes less attractive while concerns about inflation, debt, and monetary policy remain elevated, precious metals can suddenly look more interesting. That doesn't mean silver automatically goes higher. It means the environment can become more favorable. And this is where the Federal Reserve enters the story, because the Fed is not exactly united right now. The Federal Reserve's July meeting produced a highly unusual disagreement. The decision to hold interest rates steady at a range of 3.5% to 3.75% passed 9-3. 3 regional Fed presidents dissented. They wanted rates higher immediately because they were concerned that inflation, still above the Fed's 2% target, could become entrenched. That matters. A disagreement inside the Federal Reserve is not just political drama. It tells the market that policymakers are looking at the same economy and reaching different conclusions about what should happen next. Some are worried about inflation. Others are worried about keeping monetary policy restrictive for too long. And when those two forces collide, markets become more sensitive to every new inflation report, employment number, Treasury auction, and Fed communication. That uncertainty can create demand for hedges, and silver sits directly inside that conversation. The key point is not that the Fed has lost control. The key point is that the Fed is facing a difficult balancing act. If it keeps rates high, it can put more pressure on economic activity and borrowing costs. If it eases too quickly, it risks giving inflation another opportunity to strengthen. Meanwhile, the Treasury is dealing with the cost of financing massive amounts of government debt. Two parts of the U.S. financial system, two different pressures, and investors are watching both. There's another reason we need to be careful when talking about silver. Silver has a long record of making moves that look impossible, right up until they happen. The most famous example is the Hunt brothers episode of 1979 and 1980, when attempts to accumulate enormous amounts of silver helped drive prices dramatically higher before the market eventually collapsed after trading rules changed. Nobody is saying today's market is an exact repeat. It isn't. But the historical comparison teaches us something important. Silver is a relatively small and volatile market. When physical demand, investor demand, and speculative positioning all move in the same direction, the price can travel much faster than most people expect. And when those forces reverse, the downside can be just as violent. That is why we need to look beyond the price chart. We need to look at the physical market, and that takes us to the warehouses. Silver has one enormous difference compared with gold. A huge portion of the silver produced every year is not bought simply to sit in a vault. It gets used. Silver goes into solar panels. It goes into electronics. It goes into circuit boards. It goes into electric vehicles. And increasingly, it is part of the infrastructure supporting data centers and artificial intelligence. Once that silver is incorporated into a finished product, it is no longer sitting around waiting for an investor to sell it back into the market. That creates a structural problem. According to the Silver Institute and Metals Focus, 2026 is on track to become the sixth consecutive year in which global silver demand exceeds supply. The projected deficit is around 46 million ounces. And remember, this comes after 5 previous years of deficits. That is not a one-month shortage. It is a multi-year imbalance. There's another detail that makes this even more interesting. Solar manufacturers have been reducing the amount of silver used in each panel. That process is often called thrifting. If manufacturers can use less silver per panel, you would normally expect that to reduce pressure on supply. But even with those efficiency gains, the overall deficit has still widened. That tells us something. The problem isn't simply one industry using too much silver. The bigger problem is that total demand remains difficult for supply to match. This is one of the most misunderstood parts of the silver market. Most of the world's silver is not mined from primary silver-only deposits. A large portion comes as a byproduct of mining copper, lead, zinc, and other metals. That means a mining company doesn't necessarily decide, silver prices are higher, so let's dramatically increase silver production. The company may actually be operating a copper mine. Silver comes out of the same ore. So increasing silver supply often requires economics in an entirely different commodity market to justify additional mining investment. That makes silver supply much less flexible than many investors realize. And if demand rises quickly, the miners cannot necessarily respond quickly. That is why physical inventories matter so much. Now we come to the country that has become one of the most important pieces of this puzzle. China. Earlier this year, China's Ministry of Commerce reclassified silver as a strategic material and introduced a new licensing system for silver exports, replacing a quota system that had been in place for more than 2 decades. The practical implication is simple. It became more difficult for silver to leave China. Then came an extraordinary development. In March, China imported roughly 836 metric tons of silver in a single month. That was a record. It was more than double the previous monthly record set in December 2020. And roughly 173% above the 10-year seasonal average for that period. Think about the significance. A country that is already one of the world's major industrial economies suddenly pulls an enormous amount of physical silver into its domestic market. Some of that demand came from industrial users, securing supplies ahead of new export rules. Some came from investors who were increasingly priced out of gold and turned toward silver. And those two sources of demand arrived at the same time. Industrial demand, investment demand, one market, in a supply system that was already running a deficit. That combination is exactly what precious metals investors watch for. There is a bigger pattern here. The United States is dealing with debt, inflation, interest rates, and bond market pressure. China is treating silver more strategically and restricting how easily physical metal can leave the country. That means 2 of the world's largest economies are approaching the same commodity from completely different directions. One is dealing with monetary and financial pressure. The other is securing a material that has industrial and strategic value. And silver sits directly between those 2 worlds. That is why this is bigger than a simple futures chart. Now let's look at the part of the silver market most people never see. COMEX. The New York Futures Exchange divides warehouse silver into 2 major categories: registered and eligible. Registered silver has a warehouse warrant attached to it and is available to satisfy delivery obligations. Eligible silver meets the exchange's quality requirements, but its owner has not made it available for immediate delivery. That distinction is critical because when people say COMEX has hundreds of millions of ounces of silver, that number alone doesn't tell you how much metal is actually available for delivery. The most recent figures in the data we're examining show roughly 337 million ounces in COMEX vaults, but only about 99.5 million ounces were registered. The remaining roughly 238 million ounces were eligible. So the real question isn't how much silver is in the warehouse. The real question is how much silver is actually available to satisfy delivery demand. That is a much more interesting question. Back in January, during a single 7-day period, more than 33 million ounces of silver were physically withdrawn from COMEX vaults for delivery. That's an enormous amount compared with the registered inventory at the time. It showed that when market participants want physical metal, they can move significant amounts out of the system surprisingly quickly. But we need to be careful here. This is where a lot of online silver commentary goes too far. A futures delivery does not automatically mean silver leaves the warehouse. Sometimes the warehouse warrant simply changes ownership. The metal can remain exactly where it is. Registered inventory only falls when the owner actually takes the extra step of withdrawing the physical metal or changing its status. So every delivery is not evidence of an imminent shortage. That distinction matters. But there is still a legitimate issue. The coverage ratio, registered silver compared with the amount of outstanding futures. Exposure has at times fallen below 15%. That means the number of paper claims can be many times larger than the amount of registered metal available to satisfy everyone at once. Does that guarantee a COMEX crisis? No. Most futures contracts are never taken to physical delivery. Many are rolled forward. Others are settled financially. But a lower coverage ratio means the system has less cushion. And when a system has less cushion, a sudden increase in physical demand can create much bigger price movements. That is the risk. Not guaranteed collapse, not guaranteed shortage, but reduced flexibility. Now bring this out of the warehouse and onto Main Street. Imagine a retired teacher who bought physical silver 5 years ago when it was around $23 an ounce. She wasn't trying to become a millionaire. She simply wanted part of her savings in an asset that historically can act as a hedge when confidence in currencies and financial markets weakens. If silver is now worth roughly 3 times what she paid, that position has performed very differently from what a traditional savings account would have delivered. But now imagine someone on the other side of the story, a young couple trying to buy their first home. They don't own silver, they may not care about COMEX, but they're still affected by the same forces. Long-term treasury yields influence borrowing costs. Inflation influences household expenses. Federal Reserve policy influences mortgage rates. The bond market influences the cost of financing. So the silver story isn't isolated from the economy. It is connected to it. Now think about a factory worker in an electronics plant. His employer may use silver paste or silver-containing components in the products it manufactures. When silver prices rise rapidly, input costs can rise. The company may absorb those costs. It may pass them to customers, or it may try to use less silver. Either way, the price of a metal trading in New York can eventually reach an assembly line in the Midwest. And finally, consider a young investor building a portfolio for the first time. She sees silver climbing. She sees headlines talking about shortages. She sees prices moving dramatically. And she asks the most reasonable question, am I already too late? Nobody can answer that with certainty. And that's exactly why understanding the forces underneath the price matters more than trying to predict the next candle on a chart. This brings us to the bigger reason silver is so interesting. Silver has 2 major demand engines, monetary demand and industrial demand. Gold is overwhelmingly a monetary and financial asset. Silver is different. Silver is a monetary metal, but it is also an industrial material. It is inside your phone. It is inside electronics. It is used in solar technology. It is connected to electric vehicles. And increasingly, it is connected to the physical infrastructure behind artificial intelligence. The Silver Institute estimates that data center and AI-related silver demand has grown from less than 10 million ounces annually 5 years ago to somewhere between 20 and 30 million ounces this year. If AI infrastructure, cloud computing, and data centers continue expanding, that demand could continue to grow. Now, imagine what happens when both sides of silver demand accelerate at the same time. Investors want silver because of monetary uncertainty. Factories want silver because they need it for production. China wants physical inventory. And mine supply cannot respond quickly. Those forces don't simply add together, they can compound. But before you get excited, there is a side of this story that bulls often ignore. Silver can fall hard. The gold to silver ratio is currently around 67 to 68. Historically, that is not an extreme reading. The long-term range is roughly 50 to 80. Some analysts expect the ratio to move back towards 70 or even 75 over the next year. If that happens, gold could outperform silver from current levels. Silver is also much more volatile than gold. That means the same characteristic that can produce spectacular gains can also produce spectacular losses. We saw that earlier this year. Silver surged dramatically and then gave back almost half of the move within weeks. That is why forecasts should never be treated as guarantees. Some algorithmic models currently project silver into the mid-70s or even low 90s by year end. But those are models. They are based on assumptions and recent momentum. They are not promises. Markets have a long history of destroying the confidence of anyone who treats a forecast as destiny. There is another part of the global silver story that deserves attention: India. India is one of the world's major silver-consuming markets. Earlier this year, new licensing requirements restricted silver imports as authorities worked to protect foreign exchange reserves that effectively slowed shipments for several months. And when one of the world's biggest buyers suddenly becomes less active, it can temporarily reduce global demand. But then, the situation began to change. As import licensing resumed in August, traders reportedly brought close to 90 metric tons of silver through the India International Bullion Exchange in a single month, with hundreds of additional tons already covered by approved licenses. This is an important lesson. Sometimes demand doesn't disappear, it simply gets delayed. A bureaucratic restriction can make demand look weak for several months before that demand returns to the market. And when it returns all at once, the impact can be very different. There's one final distinction every silver investor should understand. The futures price and the physical price are not always the same experience. COMEX might show a silver price around $68, but the actual cost of obtaining physical silver can be higher because of premiums, transportation, fabrication, regional shortages, and dealer availability. In places such as India, China, and parts of Europe, physical premiums have at times risen well above the headline futures price. So someone looking only at the futures chart can miss what is happening in the real physical market. That doesn't mean every premium is proof of a global shortage. It simply means the ticker price is not always the complete story. And that is why physical flows deserve attention. Now we can finally connect all the pieces. Silver is above $68. The metal has posted a third straight weekly gain. The global market is projected to remain in deficit for a sixth consecutive year. China has dramatically increased physical imports and tightened export controls. COMEX registered inventory is much smaller than total warehouse inventory. The Fed is dealing with internal disagreement over the path of interest rates. The Treasury is using debt buybacks while long-term yields have been under pressure. Industrial demand continues to expand into solar, electronics, electric vehicles, and AI infrastructure. And India is beginning to return as a major physical buyer after months of restrictions. None of these facts, by itself, guarantees a silver explosion. That is not the argument. The argument is that several different forces are pointing at the same market at the same time. And when a relatively small, volatile commodity experiences that kind of convergence, the market can become extremely sensitive to new information. A Fed decision, a Treasury move, a Chinese policy announcement, a major COMEX withdrawal, a sudden change in industrial demand. Any one of those could change the psychology of the market. So here's the question. Is silver simply continuing another powerful rally, or are we watching the early stages of a much larger structural repricing? Nobody knows the answer yet, and anyone who tells you they know exactly where silver will trade 6 months from now is selling certainty that the market does not provide. But we do know something. The structural pressures behind this market have not disappeared. Supply is still struggling to keep pace with demand. Physical silver is moving across borders. China is treating the metal more strategically. The Fed is dealing with internal disagreement. The Treasury is managing a difficult bond market environment. And COMEX has far less registered silver than its headline warehouse total might make you think. That doesn't guarantee a crisis, but it does mean the market has less room for error. And when there is less room for error, price moves can become much larger. So don't just watch the silver price, watch the physical inventories. Watch China, watch the Treasury, watch the Federal Reserve, and watch the next major shift in industrial demand. Because the biggest silver story may not be the price you see today. It may be what is happening underneath that price. If you learned something new today, subscribe to Money Insights and like this video. Because the next move in gold and silver could be just as important as the one we're watching right now. And when it happens, you want to understand the machinery behind it, not just the headline.